Hello and welcome to the Talk Villa podcast. I'm your host Samit Paul, and a week on from a memorable 2025-26 season for Aston Villa coming to an end, I'm back for an end of season review to pick out some winners, including our player of the season, unsung hero, most improved, and to give a rating out of 10 for our season, and plenty more. There's also been some early transfer news. We've had Douglas Luiz not expected to stay with us when his loan deal expires. And Daniel Marlon has sealed a permanent move to Roma. So a little bit more on that later on. But let's start with the season review and look back on what was a fantastic season as we ended with a top 4 finish in the Premier League. And of course, the end of our 30-year trophy drought as we lifted the Europa League trophy in Istanbul nearly a fortnight ago already. So the season was a rollercoaster of emotions across England and Europe. It took us 5 games to just find the back of the net, let alone win a game. But victory over Bologna in late September sparked a run of 6 wins in 7. And then that was followed shortly after by an 11-game winning streak across all competitions through November and December. And it even had some wondering and some asking the question whether or not we might just be considered title contenders. Now, unfortunately, injuries began to take their toll in January, and that sort of derailed any hope of sustaining that particular push. And despite our march in Europe continuing, by late April, anxiety was building as the question was now whether or not we might even be at risk of blowing our chances of securing a top 5 finish in the league. However, then came the performances and results that would leave a mark on both our season and the history books of the club, as that dismal defeat to Tottenham was followed by impressive wins over Nottingham Forest, Liverpool, Freiburg and Manchester City, as we ended the season with what can only be described as an inspired flourish, securing Champions League football through our league position, and then, as I said, ending a 30-year trophy drought with our win in Istanbul. Now, I admit that summary does not come anywhere close to doing this past season justice. There are so many stories within the campaign that deserve to be told, whether it's an individual or a collective one. What is indisputable, though, is that every single individual involved in making this season what it was now has the eternal gratitude of every single proud Villa fan. Unai was right when he signed his contract extension a couple of years ago. He said no limits to our dreams. Who knows where the next chapter of this remarkable story takes us, but let's heed that message and let's continue to hope that this is just the beginning of something even more special to come. Now let's start with the first award, and that is the player of the season, and my vote has gone with John McGinn. Now, granted, the Villa skipper did miss 9 games through January and February with a knee injury, but I thought through both his absence and the impact that he made on his return, he emphatically reiterated just how influential he is for us. McGinn ended the season with 10 goals and 8 assists in 44 appearances across all competitions. He even admitted in one of his post-match interviews towards the back end of the season that reaching that mark of 10 goals was something that him and Emery had been speaking about. So to see him get that tally is very impressive. And it's made even more impressive by the fact that 5 of those goals and 4 of his assists came in the 15 games he featured in after returning from his injury. So there is a very strong case to be made that if we don't finish the season in the way that we did without our inspirational skipper. Now, many others came into consideration for this award. You've got Ollie Watkins being chief among them. He ended with 21 goals to his name in another stellar campaign. He overcame barren runs and doubts to emerge as our leading figure up top once again. So hats off to Ollie, another brilliant season from him. Morgan Rogers was exceptional for a period, but I thought he struggled for consistency across the entire year and for large periods within that year. Matty Cash, Ezri Konsa, Pau Torres, Emiliano Martinez all played crucial roles among others, but for me it's McGinn who pips them all, as he is the inspirational leader that guided us to the success that we enjoyed. On to the most improved, and that is for me Emiliano Buendia. Now, what a year for our number 10. After the pain and the struggles of his rehabilitation following that devastating knee injury in 2023, there were serious doubts over whether or not he would even play for us again. He went on loan to Bayer Leverkusen. That seemed to be the start of the path towards a permanent departure. Now, His determination and resilience is often on full display in his all-action and his committed performances on the pitch, but he managed to add quality to that, which is what we needed, and he delivered when we needed him. He finished with 11 goals and 9 assists in 54 appearances across all competitions, and having provided us with some of the most memorable goals and moments of our season, which we'll touch on in more detail shortly, Buendia for me deserves all the praise coming his way, as he was desperate to carve out a role for himself under Emery at Villa, and he ultimately succeeded. I think there was a period where Emery even admitted to the media as well that he wasn't so sure if Buendia would get the playing time that he was looking for. Obviously, as I say, he went on loan to Leverkusen for a period, but he came back and he fought for his spot on the team. And he came back and he's delivered in a significant way this season. So, as I say, hats off to Emi Buendia. The unsung hero of our season for me was Victor Lindelof. And this was another tricky one, as I thought the likes of Luca Dean, Cash, Konza, Pau, and even Ross Barkley and Marco Bizot, who stepped up when we needed them to. All those individuals were incredibly consistent over the campaign and don't necessarily get the acknowledgement that they deserve. However, such was the class shown by the Iceman over the last stretch of the season. We needed a solution in midfield next to Yuri Tielemans, with the absence of Kamara and Onana at times as well. And Lindelof proved to be one of the most savvy recent signings that we've made. He provided defensive protection, composure and quality in possession to shift the ball quickly and allow us to play our preferred style. But also he gave Emery the tactical flexibility to outwit his rivals. We saw how he was able to drop back into a back three when needed, but he was also very, very comfortable sitting next to Tielemans and sort of dictating and providing that physical presence in midfield for us. Add on top of all of that his experience, his leadership, his professionalism. I think it's a hard case to go against Lindelof getting this award. As I say, there are many names that came into consideration, but for me, it's Lindelof that gets it. The biggest disappointment of the season was unfortunately the Harvey Elliott situation. Now, granted, more was expected from Ian Matson, Andres Garcia, and I thought our loanees who arrived in January didn't really have the ideal impact. Sancho was probably the most effective of them, but even he was limited. And Douglas Luiz, Leon Bailey played their part, but never quite made that desired impression that we wanted from them. Tammy Abraham had a limited role as well. Alisson was blighted by injuries, and so it's hoped that a full pre-season will give him the chance to get up to speed and get ready for next year. Rodgers' form tailed off for large periods, and perhaps the injury blows we suffered in midfield with Kamara, Tielemans, Onana and McGinn all being sidelined at a time when we could have pushed on for more in the Premier League made that a legitimate choice here as well. But the Harvey Elliott situation stands out for me. Credit to him, because Emery consistently spoke about his professionalism, attitude, character as he continued to work hard as part of the squad, despite knowing that he effectively just wouldn't feature for us because we were trying to avoid triggering that obligation to buy clause in his contract with us. So it's a real shame. He's lost a season of his career through that, and the two clubs couldn't find a solution that suited everybody in January. So moving forward, I just hope that he finds a more suitable option this summer. It gives him the opportunity to play regular football in a more prominent role, and it allows him to get his career back on track, both at club and international level. On to my favourite goal of the season, and there are so many contenders for this. Each of you will have your preference based on the quality of the goal itself or what it meant in the context of that specific game. Whether it was a sensational Buendia goal at Tottenham earlier in the season, or either his effort or Tielemans' effort against Freiburg in the Europa League final, the shortlist this year is very, very impressive. But for me, the one that jumps out the most is the last gasp Buendia winner against Arsenal in December. From the quality of his finish in that pressurised moment with the last kick of the game, how it sealed all 3 points against a team who at that time we were trying to chase down and establish ourselves next to in the title race, and then just the subsequent scenes of celebration inside Villa Park. It was an immense moment, magic moment, and that for me stands out the most as my favourite goal of the season. My favourite moment of the season, could it be anything other than McGinn lifting the Europa League trophy in Istanbul? The celebrations that followed provided a million top moments. Our journey to securing the fourth place finish in the league added more to what was a delightful shortlist. However, after a 30-year wait, having come close in recent seasons, to finally see McGinn, of all people, the man who's been a major part of this resurgence and has led us to the position that we're in now as captain, lift that silverware, celebrate with Emery and his teammates, that was undoubtedly my favourite moment from this year. And then finally, rating our season out of 10, I have given it a 9, which may seem a little bit harsh to some, but the mission was clear at the start of the season. Villa wanted to qualify for the Champions League through our league position, and winning a trophy was on everyone's mind after coming close, but coming up short in the semi-finals in the previous 2 years. Now, given both were achieved, and particularly with the latter coming in Europe, that perhaps makes this the perfect season and deserving of a 10 out of 10 rating, as I'm sure many of you would probably give this a 10 out of 10. But I think there's always room for improvement, and who knows, if we can continue to keep building in the right way on and off the pitch this summer, perhaps we can aim for higher than 4th next season and continue this remarkable progression under Emery, and then you'll see me give us a 10 out of 10. But like I say, it could be deemed harsh, but magical season, one that we'll all remember for a long, long time. But like I say, just room for improvement. We can still get better, and that's why I went with a 9 out of 10. So just to get to some of your answers on these, we had Lee Perry on Blue Sky. He said Super John McGinn for his player of the season, Emi Buendia for his most improved. His unsung hero was different to mine. He went for Matty Cash, and I completely get that. Cash has been Mr. Consistent throughout the course of this season. He's improved his game. He's been very reliable, and he's played a massive part in where we got to at the end of the season. So completely agree with that choice as well. His biggest disappointment was Douglas Luiz, and I would agree to an extent. He certainly didn't play to the level that we needed him to play at after we lost the likes of Tielemans and Onana and Kamara to injury. But I kind of saw it coming. It's not that I don't rate Douglas Luiz. I think he's a fantastic footballer, but the level that Tielemans has set in that role, I just don't think he's capable of reaching. We've taken a massive step forward with Tielemans, the way he's played over the last couple of years. And Luiz coming back was a fix that we needed. We needed some sort of solution and another option in there, but I was never confident that he was going to be able to tick all the right boxes and be the solution that we needed. So I agree with you, definitely a disappointment, but I think there were some other bigger disappointments, in my opinion. His favourite goal was Tielemans' goal in the Europa League final, and that was just such a sweet, sweet strike, so completely see where you're coming from with that. His favourite moment was the same as mine, obviously, Europa League win, and he gave our season an 8 out of 10, so perhaps agreeing with me there that there is definitely still room for improvement, even though, like I say, this was just an unbelievable season. Steve Hannon on Blue Sky gave his Player of the Season award to McGinn as well. He also agreed with me on most improved being Buendia and unsung hero being Lindelof. His biggest disappointment was the Spurs game, and I think we can all agree and understand where he's coming from with that, because that was just a woeful, woeful display. It obviously became a distant memory with the way that we followed that up with the performances and results against Forest, Liverpool, City, and obviously Freiburg as well. But the manner in which we lost that game and subsequently helped Spurs stay up with those 3 points, that was a really, really big disappointment. His favourite goal of the season was McGinn's first against Forest, and another memorable goal there as well. Favourite moment was Aston Villa, and I think it's going to be difficult for anyone to disagree with us on that one. And he gave our season a rating of 9 out of 10, so agreeing with me there. Benjamin Allen on Blue Sky, Player of the Season, McGinn. Most improved, Buendia, so 2 out of 2 with my choices. His unsung hero was Luca Dean, and similarly to Cash, I would say that they were both very, very consistent and reliable. So definitely credit to both our fullbacks. Biggest disappointment, player-wise, Gesson and Sancho, but also as a club, the Spurs game and the Harvey Elliott situation. So we've touched on the Spurs game and the Harvey Elliott situation already. I've kind of mentioned that I agree with him on Sancho. I don't think he played to the level that he is capable of and that we required. We saw flashes of it, but it wasn't consistent enough, and it wasn't good enough in the end, because I don't think we're going to see Villa try and sign him outright and bring him back. And Gassant, really, really disappointing because we spent a chunk of our summer transfer budget on him and the profile kind of fit. You could see where we were coming from. It was the athletic build, pace, good movement, versatility in terms of his positioning, flexibility. So I kind of saw how he could fit into the Emery team and system, but it just didn't work. He was just too lightweight, too out of position, too almost looking confused as to what his role was or where he was supposed to be. And it's a shame, but he obviously went on to play at Palace. He won a trophy there as well. And yeah, good luck to him. I think we're probably going to end up trying to push him on in a permanent exit, but we'll have to wait and see whether or not there are any realistic buyers that are lining up to get him. Jerry Reid on Blue Sky agreed with me as well. Player of the season was McGinn. He also agreed on Buendia being most improved. His unsung hero was also Lindelof, but he said Cash is 1A. Biggest disappointment was Kamara getting hurt again. And I agree, just purely because what Boubacar means to the team, his influence in that midfield role. We definitely missed him through the second half of the season. Obviously, we did what we had to do and we got our objectives done without him. So you can say that we managed that situation a lot better than in previous occasions. But it definitely hurts us losing him to injury. And hopefully next season and beyond, he can stay healthy, stay clear of injuries and play a full season. And that will, hopefully help us to continue to push on. Jerry's favourite goal was Buendia against Spurs, and what a beauty that was. The build-up play, the finish, just an incredible goal that was worthy of getting a nod in the Premier League goal of the season. Favourite moment was Istanbul, and again, like I said earlier, can't disagree. That moment, that journey, just everything about the culmination of everything that led to that moment of lifting the trophy. Brilliant stuff in Istanbul. And his rating out of 10 for the season was also a 9. That January-March stretch was bleak. I worried that the whole project would fall apart. I'm fairly certain you weren't the only one, and there was probably a lot of discontent and panic early in the season as well, through that 5-game period where we couldn't score, couldn't win. I think a lot of question marks were asked, so I'm sure you weren't alone, and things did look very, very bleak, as you say, but we turned it around in April and May when it really, really mattered. And, hopefully we can continue to learn lessons from where we fell short and keep moving in the right direction. Over on Threads, I posted a bunch of polls to get your opinion there. The winner of the Villa Player of the Season vote was John McGinn. The biggest disappointment was our midfield injuries. The unsung hero was Ezri Konsa. And again, like I say, he is one of those that just doesn't get as much acknowledgement as perhaps some of our attacking players. I did feel as though his form did dip at some point during the season. He obviously had that moment away at Wolves as well with the supporters, which didn't go down very well. But he is Mr. Reliable. He is Mr. Consistency for the most part. And yeah, like I say, he's deserving of that award just as much as anyone else. I also like to give a shout out to Pau as well. I mentioned him earlier, I think, but he's in the same bracket. We're aware of his talent and his influence in terms of his quality on the ball and his composure, but his defensive game massively improved this season as well. I thought he dealt with the physical battles a lot better. You can see a definite improvement in that part of his game, so hats off to him for working on that. And the most improved vote went to Emi Buendia. So a lot of people going with the same answers, agreeing, but like I say, there were so many candidates that are worthy of winning it. The main thing is, as a collective, we got the job done and we achieved our objectives. So just moving on to some transfer news briefly, we saw Daniel Marlon complete his move to Roma on a permanent basis. He obviously went to join them in January and impressed in the second half of the season, so it made sense from Roma's perspective to trigger that clause and sign him outright. It is disappointing because Daniel Marlon did give us a spark. He was an important part of the squad in that first half of the season, and I felt like we definitely missed having him as an option through the second half of the campaign. It would have been nice to perhaps bring him back, but I think we were potentially sort of hamstrung in that sense. It was out of our hands for Roma to sign him on a permanent basis. So good luck to him. I really do wish him well for the future. He ends with 10 goals and 2 assists in 46 appearances for Villa. As I say, he played his part in helping us to get us to where we are now. So that he deserves credit and appreciation for that. But yeah, like I said, tinge of disappointment because I do feel as though he could have come back and done something for us if that was ever an option. But that money will hopefully now be reinvested wisely to strengthen the squad, and Emery can bring in a more suitable option that suits what he's continuing to build with us. Now, it is that time of the year where there is all sorts of speculation flying around about potential incomings and outgoings. I'm not going to go into every single one because probably be here for another hour. But Douglas Luiz is expected to return to Juventus as Villa have reportedly decided against triggering the €25 million option to sign him on a permanent basis. So as I sort of touched on earlier, I agree with this decision. I think it's the right one. Luiz was a solution and a fix, a short-term one that we needed when we had that injury crisis in midfield. He was familiar with the system, the way of playing, Emery's way of doing things. So I think it was a sensible decision at that time to bring him back for 6 months and do a job for us. But like I said earlier, I just don't think he's at the level now that Tielemans in particular has set for us in that midfield role. It's a very, very difficult position. It's a lot of responsibility, particularly with how Emery wants us to play and how it all sort of gets orchestrated by that player in midfield. Tielemans does it unbelievably well. He is just world class, and it was so disappointing and sad to see him get injured at that stage in our season. But Luiz, if he is to return to Juventus as reported, then I think, like I said, it's the right decision from Villa, and hopefully with that money from the Marlon sale and all the other income that's coming our way, hopefully we can bring in an option that suits Emery better than Luiz and can do that job more effectively when needed. So who would you have selected for the awards mentioned? Have Villa made the right decision to not sign Douglas Luiz on a permanent basis? Let me know your thoughts. If you're listening on YouTube, you can leave your answers and comments below. For those listening to the pod via Apple Podcasts, Spotify or other means, please head over to talkvilla.substack.com and get involved in the conversation over there. So that's a wrap on this episode of the Talk Villa podcast. A big thank you as always for taking the time to have a listen. Please do subscribe to the pod or channel depending on where you're listening. So that's either on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or YouTube or wherever else you get your podcasts. Give the episode a like or leave a positive review if you've enjoyed it, please. There will be plenty more content over the summer as well, as there is no doubt more transfer speculation and preparation for the new campaign ahead. Sign up to the Talk Villa Plus newsletter on Substack for ad-free Villa news, opinions and analysis, all of which is delivered directly to you, and there is also an option of a paid subscription for bonus content. All the details will be in the description of this podcast, but for more, please go to talkvilla.substack.com and subscribe over there. So that's it for this episode of the Talk Villa podcast and for the 2025-26 season. Celebrating our achievements this past year will no doubt continue, and rightly so, but as the weeks go on, the focus will start to switch to ensuring that we can build on this past campaign and continue to enjoy success moving forward. But it starts with the UEFA Super Cup clash with PSG in Salzburg after they won the Champions League. So that should be a fun game to look forward to. But preparations in terms of building the squad, improving the squad, and pre-season schedules and training and all that sort of stuff will no doubt be announced sooner rather than later. The World Cup will, of course, continue to keep us busy in the coming weeks. But I'll be back with the pod and newsletters as and when big news emerges. But for now, enjoy the build-up to the World Cup. And as always, up the Villa.